Say hello to the Book of Mormon. Ben Brantley of the New York Times says the Book of Mormon is the best musical of this century. Winner of 9 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. The Book of Mormon. Performances begin February 12th at Robinson Performance Hall. Visit CelebrityAttractions.com.
Good afternoon, Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Friday, February the 1st. Well, let's start with something I call blockbusting news, and understand, as you do from watching these, that I inject a little opinion into the news of the day. Last night, the Arkansas Advocates for Children and Families released an analysis by an independent group on the impact of Asa Hutchinson's proposed income tax reduction plan. As I've said before, it's a real gift to the rich, but it's an even bigger gift to the rich than we knew. The new numbers show that his new plan, which reduces the cut in state income somewhat, is an even bigger giveaway to the wealthy. 70% of the benefits of this tax cut will go to the top 1% of the income tax filers in Arkansas. 90% will go to the top 5%. That's people making more than $205,000 a year. And this is a much more significant finding, I think, for the big picture for the state. The analysis says that the income tax cut, if passed, will cost the state more than $150 million a year in lost state revenue. The governor has said it'll only be $97 million, but his figures were based on 2016 numbers. The rich do get richer. 3 years later, the cut's going to be worth a lot more to the rich people. Poor people, people making less than $80,000 a year, get essentially nothing, not a cent. Those making, well, I'm sorry, if you make $50,000 a year, you'll get a 40-cent a week tax cut. Not a very good deal. Will this matter at the Arkansas legislature? Good question. Democrats say they'll try and cut back the loss to state services. They say they'll propose an earned income tax credit to help the working poor. But the sentiment seems to be in the Republican majority legislature to comfort the rich this year, so we'll see. Speaking of comforting the elites, Kelly Eichler is a member of the University of Arkansas Board of Trustees, former Huckabee and Asa Hutchinson staff member, lawyer from Little Rock. She alone stood up on the UA Board of Trustees yesterday that said she opposed a plan to have a research unit at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, research diversity issues and find out how a more inclusive policy can improve employment, help business. Most of the studies show that it works that way. She doesn't like the idea of diversity. She's afraid a university may be teaching its students some things that run counter to conservative opinion in this conservative state. I'd remind Ms. Eichler that this state just approved a minimum wage increase in medical marijuana and showed some support for some other things not generally considered, quote, conservative, unquote, values. But she just doesn't like it. She'll teach her children what they need to know about values, and the universities, well, they need to teach the kind of things that she believes in, I guess. She didn't make it clear if it was sexual minorities, racial minorities, religious minorities, ethnic minorities that bother her so much in university teaching. I'm for letting the universities teach a lot. They had a good report yesterday about the value of the diversity discussions that have been held by the Winthrop Rockefeller Institute, thanks to a $100 million gift from the trust of that great former Republican governor. Perhaps we could save a lot of money and time by just letting Kelly Eichler tell everybody what they need to know. That's how she does it in her family. Well, what else have we got to talk about? Oh, yes, Asa Hutchinson gave a speech this week in which he'd said he'd given $200,000 left over from his inaugural fund to the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. How he gets to control $200,000 is an ethical question for the Ethics Commission to consider, but it turns out this is money that was gathered and spent by the Arkansas Republican Party. It's a money laundering scheme that allows political parties to raise money from the state's biggest private interest to pay for fancy parties for the governor, and the governor had a fancy one. We know that the money came big money from the usual sources, whether it's Tyson Foods, Stevens, LLC, or other big corporate players. The spending money was kind of interesting. He got about $500,000 from private interest at least to spend. They hide this money in the larger state Republican Party report, so we don't always know for sure, but $135,000 went to an events production manager that does lighting and sound and that sort of thing. $45,000 went to Stacy Hurst, who happens to be a department director for Asa Hutchinson. Another $27,000 or so went to an interior designer, Shayla Cope, who is also friendly with the governor. More on that to come, but not until the quarterly report in April. We learned yesterday that the state is now out of execution drugs. The last one's expired. Don't have any more in stock, and the state's going to have to pass legislation to keep it secret because you see drug manufacturers don't want their drugs used for this reason, and the state has to operate in a clandestine back alley fashion to get killing drugs before they can kill people. Legislation is yet to come. I mentioned yesterday that the Arkansas Times new monthly edition is out on the streets. Head to your newsstands in Central Arkansas. It's free as ever, and it's full of good stuff. If you want to subscribe, call the Arkansas Times, 501-375-2985, or check the Arkansas blog for email addresses for Anitra Hickman or Linda Phillips, and we'll be happy to give you a subscription. You don't have to pay to pick up an Arkansas Times, but if you want it delivered by U.S. mail to the home, it'll cost you $60. Well worth it, I have to say, even though I am conflicted by being an employee here. I'm Max Brantley. My final word for the week, resist. I'll be back next week.